I have a very disturbing and unusual story out of Cologne, Germany to discuss with you. There are countless reports that women were sexually assaulted in what was a possible coordinated series of sexual assaults and muggings in downtown Cologne, Germany on New Year's Eve. Authorities and media were accused of sort of covering up the initial indications that, according to police, the overwhelming majority of the alleged perpetrators were Muslims of Arab and North African origin. There were 60 complaints filed to police, a third of which were linked to sexual assault. And Cologne's mayor, Henriette Reker, called an emergency meeting of high ranking security officials yesterday, saying her aim is to ensure that the city center does not turn into a lawless zone. And the descriptions are that 500 to 1,000 men, described as drunk and aggressive, were believed to have been behind these attacks on people basically just partying on New Year's Eve in the center of the West German city. Whether they were working as a group or individual groups or just individuals, not totally clear. There's an ongoing investigation, and there's so much to discuss here, Lewis. Number one, we have this issue that there is an accusation that the origin of these individuals was being suppressed in initial reports of the story.
Yeah, and considering the climate right now, I mean, I can see why they might want to do that. They might not want to cause a stir, to create fear, to increase animus towards the Muslim community.
Right.
And, that's fine. I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. It's not fine. I mean, this needs to be let out. This needs to be reported on.
You're saying
accurately.
you understand not wanting to increase animus against the community broadly, but that doesn't
that's
justify.
right.
Yeah.
Covering this up and trying to hide the facts is not the right thing to do. It seems that what we're talking about here is true. It seems that they are of, Muslim origins or practicing Muslims or who knows. But, these men come from a world where men do whatever they want to women, and women, are generally crapped on. In my opinion, that's the world of Islam. So, of course, not all of the world of Islam, much of the world of Islam, before people jump down my throat here. So, yes, you just report the facts, and whatever happens, happens. The truth is the most important thing.
So that's part one of the controversy. Part two of the controversy, and I really want to dig into this, is that Mayor Henriette Reker made some comments in reaction to the assaults that have angered a lot of people. She suggested that women adopt a so-called code of conduct to prevent future assaults. And the crisis management team said that there should be a code of conduct for young women and girls. And Mayor Reker said that the existing code of conduct is going to be updated online, etc. And this suggests, number one, maintaining an arm's length distance from strangers. Number two, sticking within your own group when you're out in public, asking bystanders for help or to intervene as witnesses, and to inform police if you're the victim of such an assault. At face value, this is not crazy, other than the idea of keeping strangers at arm's length. Yeah, keeping strangers at arm's length. You're in public. How do you walk around like this? You don't allow anyone. Doesn't really make sense. But
yeah, because that's going to stop someone from mugging you, right?
Right. These could be called sort of obvious suggestions to the extent that the first one isn't crazy, okay? But the anger is coming because the advice from the mayor and the public safety officials seems to be focused on the victims rather than the rapists. And Mayor Reker also said a better explanation to asylum seekers was needed about the meaning of these annual parties. That almost feels satirical. Like, hey, listen, if we just explain to them, hey guys, just so you know, Germany on New Year's Eve is not a day to sexually assault women, that seems like a laughable suggestion.
Yeah, the code of conduct should be for the people who did the assaulting. I mean, that's who needs, those are the people who need a code of conduct. Asking people for help when there's an assault happening makes perfect sense. Tell the police, makes perfect sense. But the code of conduct idea for the victims here is kind of part of that strict father, quasi-religious you might be out of control and not wearing enough clothing mentality.
It somewhat is. And we've talked about this before, right? In the context of sexual assault, victim blaming versus sort of pragmatic advice and warnings to keep someone safe. The focus should be on the systemic issues that allowed this to happen. A group that possibly in a coordinated way allegedly carried out mass sexual assaults, a lack of police presence has been identified. That all needs to be top priority. But it's also not crazy for women to have a personal plan if the need should unfortunately come up. This is a never-ending conversation, personal responsibility versus victim blaming. We don't want to do victim blaming because it's outrageous and offensive and incorrect. Saying women in a particular neighborhood at night should not be alone, right? That's not blaming women who are alone in that neighborhood. That is just a sort of pragmatic piece of advice. Saying if women didn't dress provocatively, men wouldn't want to rape them. That is absolutely outrageous and an example of victim blaming. These are sort of opposite scenarios. Many of these are sort of in the gray area.
Yeah, I mean, there are the suggestions that are just common sense, lower your risk suggestions.
Right.
And then there are the other ones. So
here's the important distinction, I think, Lewis, and tell me if this resonates with you. And I've tried to reduce it to the simplest terms possible. Warning people that you should do these things to be safe is very different than blaming victims by saying you should have done those things and it is thus your fault that you were raped.
Now, what are you asking me?
No, I'm saying that's the simplest way I can sort of delineate the difference between victim blaming and sort of pragmatic warnings for people.
Yeah, I think so. So, sometimes it's a fine line you're towing with the language you use, or not you, people who make these suggestions.
That one uses.
Right. Anyway, that's it, really.
Do you think that the code of conduct is offensive, or do you think that the wording is bad, but the idea of sort of pragmatic advice for how to stay safe makes sense?
I think even the word conduct is not the right word here. Conduct means how you conduct yourself,
right? How
you act. So code of conduct, I think, is not even the term we should use. I'm all for common sense, things to reduce risk and to avoid putting yourself in a dangerous situation. Yes, maybe if you are, unable to defend yourself, you shouldn't be walking through bad neighborhoods alone at night. That makes sense.
Now, of course,
code of conduct.
If you live in those neighborhoods because of, for example, financial issues, and you don't really have a way of avoiding being in that neighborhood at night because you're working two jobs, that's when these sort of pragmatic bits of advice can start to become a little bit condescending and patronizing. When someone says, listen, I would not be working at midnight and I would not be living in this neighborhood were I able to earn a living wage, for example. And we have to be sensitive to that. That's a very realistic situation.
No doubt. Yeah. And, in this particular instance, this might have been organized. You have tons of people in the street partying.
Yeah.
You have other people intermingling. There's a lot of drinking going on. There's a lot of confusion, big crowds. It's nighttime. And, this is very different from the normal scenario that we see when there's individual instances of this type of thing.
Final point, the focus should be on the alleged perpetrators, not the victims.